can be officially put into the Oxford Dictionary as the term used by sexist men to define women they can't have or couldn't handle. Because in a patriarchal world, you're either an object of desire or dread. Or even worse, you could become an object of devotion and worship. But at the very core of it, you remain an object to the male gaze. And if I had a penny, for every time I was mansplained on a topic of my actual expertise, I'd buy all of you your private islands. If the first man and the first woman were born equal, where exactly in the process of evolution did we lose the plot? How is it that at some point in history, men banded together to agree they were the superior gender, and women banded together to agree with them? Where did we lose the effing plot? Urban women sitting here who are navigating professional and social spaces, it is safe to say that our next author is our fairy godmother, and her book could easily be our user manual to get through this world with our sanity intact. Meet our next author, Sindhu Rajasekaran, an acclaimed author and filmmaker whose recognition and celebration has been uphill ever since her debut novel, Kaleidoscope Reflections. Ever since the book was longlisted for the Crossword Book Award in 2011. Miss Sindhu co founded an independent film production company, Campus Cinema, and produced the critically acclaimed Indo British feature film, Ramanujan, based on the life and times of the mathematical prodigy Srinivasa Ramanujan. Miss Sindhu obtained a master's degree in English from the University of Edinburgh after completing her training as an electronics and communications engineer in Anna University. Smashing the Patriarchy, published in 2021, is Miss Sindhu's third book. Centered around the fearless voices of millennials and Gen Zs, it explores how young Indian women from diverse backgrounds cleverly combat sexism and in their everyday living. Sindhu was born in Madras and has lived in various cities and countries over the years. Vancouver, Edinburgh, Delhi, and Bombay have all been home to her before she moved to Glasgow. She loves adventure and exploring new cultures, and she is here to help us maneuver our social spaces. Moderating this session is Aditi Jain, who is an Enthu Cutlet, a default cheerleader, and a romantic. She is an entrepreneur and a philomath with degrees in architecture, English literature, communications, and law. An ex brand strategist, she loves interrogating people about their lives and harbors an insatiable curiosity about them. Aditi thinks the ordinary is highly underrated. She's happy to lead an ordinary life and grateful for the privilege. I request Aditi to usher our author Sindhu Rajasekaran on the dais.
Welcome, Sindhu. So obviously, I've been stalking you ceaselessly for the past couple of months, and I keep reading this word nomad on your descriptors wherever you're describing yourself. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say that introduction was brilliant. All the stuff that you said, my penny is with you. But yeah, so about the nomad thing, my dad is a bureaucrat now, retired. He was an IAS officer, so he moved a lot, growing up. So I've lived in so many cities in India. So that sort of stuck as an adult. I've just been moving around. I lived in India, Canada, the UK, blah blah. And in my personal life, I think the nomadic thing is I cannot stick to any one thing for a long time. So I was trained to be an engineer, but then I'm like, I can't do this job. It's too boring. And then I got a master's in English, and then I was, making movies, and now I'm back in academia doing a PhD. So I consider myself a nomad because I'm always going from one place. I transgress a lot.
Okay, so your first book you wrote when you were only 24 years old.
Yeah.
And it got longlisted for the award, and then you wrote poetry which got published like all over, and then you wrote another fiction book. So how come non-fiction then?
Again, the same transgressing nomadic thing, right? Like I cannot stick to any one form of writing. So I enjoy writing and I want to tell the story. So it doesn't really matter to me what form it is. It could be poetry, it could be prose. So this book happened because I had all these stories of really powerful women in the everyday world, and I'm like, I have to tell these stories. And then I thought the best version, the form to tell it was nonfiction. And I have a brilliant editor for this book, Pujita Krishnan, who commissioned me to write it. And she really could see where this was going, and she would like tell me, do this, do that. And it just expanded and expanded and became this book.
So was the feminism thing her idea? I mean, why feminism? I mean, why did you choose?
I'd written this on Medium. I'd written this thing called Bollywood and Boobs. It was about how, if you look at how women's boobs are represented in Bollywood over the years,
Yeah.
you can see how sexism plays out. You know. So, and she read it, and it was obviously feminist and post-feminist. So she read it, and then she said, "This is a great book idea." Like, you know, so that's how it started.
So, for our readers here, who some of them might not have read the book, would you like to give a gist as to what all it contains?
Sure. So the basic idea behind this book was that not all women call themselves feminists because it obviously has all these connotations, right? But every woman smashes the patriarchy in her life every effing day, right? Whether you believe in feminism or not, you just have to do it to survive. Like, you know, the misogyny in your social life, in your public life, in your private life, in your, you know, at work, in your educational institutions. It's just like every day these women have to fight these battles. And what amazed me was that even women who did not understand feminist lingo were still doing it. We're just doing it in their own ways. And even within traditional systems, women have found ways to stand up to that and make their own spaces where they have their agency and where they have power, right? So this book is about exploring women's power.
So you have divided into a couple of sections,
Mhm.
and they speak a certain. So which one would you say needed the most hard work?
Let me think. Oh, that's a hard question. I think for me personally, the hardest one to write was the one about sexuality. So I call that, let me tell you, there's a thing called demystifying the feminine. That's a chapter in the book. That was the hardest thing personally to write. And I also have a chapter on beauty in the book to talk about, you know, women's own bodies and, you know, how they look at it and how society looks at it. And I got a lot of flack from some feminists for writing that on beauty. They're like, why have a whole chapter on beauty in a book about like feminism? And I'm like, that's how society looks at women, right? Like we either judge that we're very pretty or we're not. We'll come to that. I think you wanted to talk about that. But yeah, that was the hardest chapter.
So when I was going through your citations and the bibliography, it looks like you have read at least 1,000 books. So how, I mean, and like when did you start? Were you like 10? Because how did you finish like reading 1,000 books for the research?
So this book took me, I think, 4.5 years almost to write it. It's a very slow sort of a thing. I was reading, and I think the most amazing thing about this book is as I interviewed a lot of people for it, academics, everyday women, theorists, working, and everybody would say something that would be like, oh my God, I have to, and it would open up my own viewpoint, and then I'd read something more, and I'd read something more, and it just added on and on and on. And with Aleph, you write books slowly anyway. So we took 4 years to write. I took 4 years to write it, and they edited it, and blah blah. So it took a long time. I'm a slow writer.
No, but it doesn't read like a slow book though.
Mm.
It reads like fiction. It's so beautifully written that you don't feel, I couldn't put it down. I mean, really.
Thank you.
So what I want to ask you about is that, you know, it's been a while now that we hear about masculine and feminine qualities, especially around the so-called soft skills. And this lingo has been doing the rounds for a while now.
Mhm.
And you have also spoken about it in the book. So could you just tell us a little more about these masculine and feminine qualities?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because it's a very hot topic, like, you know. And I think basically all of us are androgynous, right? We all have feminine qualities, masculine qualities, neuter qualities. But the whole thing about the patriarchy is that it wants women to be hyper feminine and men to be hyper masculine, which is never the case. Like men are feminine, women are masculine, whatever, right? But then that's how it's been looked at. And the worst thing about it is that it sees that feminine qualities are weaker than masculine qualities. And if anybody shows masculine qualities in the workplace, for a long time they were not given. And this showed up in a lot of research that I did, research papers in corporates that, you know, research that was done in corporates shows that, men with feminine qualities or women with very feminine qualities cannot go up the ladder in managerial positions because you have to be a bit like what they call cowboy. Like, you know, you have to be like, show that power. And so even women within these organizations have to play up those sides of their personalities to get to the, but then the thing with about women is once they get that, like, oh, that bitch, you know, look at her, like, you know, look at her, like she's being like a man. And if a man isn't like that, he wouldn't even get there in the first place. So that's the thing. And now, after all these years, now suddenly emotional intelligence is very important. Suddenly, all and what the hell, intuition and emotional intelligence is like basic quality for all women. We've just had it. And suddenly now they've decided, the patriarchy and the corporates have decided, this is something we want. We want intuitive women, people, managers. And I'm like, promote the women.
So your book has garnered very just great reviews, and it's been critically acclaimed. But you've also had some naysayers, and so I want to. So this is my favorite one. So I'm just going to read it out, so then you can tell me
Yeah.
how you respond to it. All in all, smashing the patriarchy confuses more than it convinces. More than reasoning about the nuances and complexities, it only perplexes one over and over again, contradicting itself on the same page and countering its own base.
So I want to respond to this.
Please.
It's interesting because I teach creative writing, to my students, and I tell all of them that if you're going to write, like you will face criticism, whatever it is, and then you have to be bold enough to face that. So for me, it's like constructive criticism. I'm always happy to take because there's something in it that you will see that okay, maybe I could have done this differently or that. So I read criticism with an open mind. But if it comes from a place of hate, I don't engage with it because I don't have time for hate. There's so much to do in my own headspace. But with respect to this particular thing that you read out, I think the whole crux of my book is subjectivity. That's what I look at, and I look at how women are so contradictory and people are so different from each other. What one woman says, another woman would not agree. So if somebody is looking for a textbook, this is not a textbook. This book will make you think for yourself, and it's up to you to make your own choices. And that's what this book is about. So if the person was looking for something like do this is not feminism. This book is not that book. So they're just looking in the wrong place.
Absolutely, because there's absolutely nothing prescriptive about it. I think the very fact that it makes you think about what your own brand of feminism is, because as you said, a lot of women don't want to identify as feminists. So okay, fine, don't do that, but at least know your own mind. And I think it
Exactly.
really makes you find that part of yourself, that what kind of feminist are you, or
Yeah.
what kind of person you are really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, moving on, you are doing your doctoral research right now, and your topic is queer South Asian past and decolonizing sexuality. So, what does it entail? What made you choose it?
Okay, this is gonna take some time, so I'll drink water first.
Yeah, of course.
So, I'm queer, okay, and growing up in India as a teenager, when I thought I was a lesbian then. Now I think I'm a bisexual, but I just call myself queer. But growing up then, it was like, oh my God, you cannot be like this. And society was like, you'll get arrested, blah blah. But then my mom, who was so scandalized by all of this, first thing she says to me, she says, this is so common. Like everybody has this phase. And I'm like, if it's so common and everybody has this phase, then why is it not normal, right? That was the first thing that led me to research about this. And then I started researching and I found that in pre colonial times in India, gender and sexuality were not so constrained. A lot of people had what we would call now bisexual relationships or same sex relationships. It was very common. It's in our poetry, it's in our prose, it's in our stories, it's everywhere, right? But the British criminalized it with section. Not to say that it's not like all the other patriarchies that came before were okay with it. They had purist tendencies which said this is not okay. But people always transgressed in India, like that's India. So we never listened to those rules, and that's how we were. But the British criminalized it legally, made it illegal, right? So that made it so immoral in society that people were arrested literally for this, and or people would be threatened with arrest for being, especially men. For women could sort of get away, but then they would be called prostitutes. If the British would put them in the register as prostitutes, if they were in many relationships with many people or same-sex relationships, all of that. This is all there in the archives. So now when I'm looking at it in my research, it's just amazing that India became this India today, and I had to go to the UK to find this out. So anyway, yeah, that's what happened.
Right. So, you have spoken about queerness being a part of Indian history. What I want to speak to you about is you have also written about the body, and I think that is one part that you do mention frequently. So, where does this entire matrix of body shaming come in really? Is that also a part of like ancient India, or where does that come from?
I think it's a lot to do with racism in the Indian context, casteism, all of that. Because you can see, like, right from the beginning, if you take like ancient India, you see how all the demonesses are always dark and they have bad teeth, and all the goddesses are all fair, and you can see what's happening. So this has been going on forever, right, in India. It just changes what it's like. In medieval India, the first emperor, the Mughal emperor, he thought like all the Indian people were very ugly. He wrote it in his book, in his memoir. So it's like, so, and then you have the British coming and again telling everybody, oh, these women are also like ugly, right? You see that again, which is also contradictory because there were so many British soldiers who were in love with Indian women, married them in the beginning, and all of that happened. But then the patriarchy is such, right? It categorizes women based on what it wants from them, right? So this has been going on for a long time. It's just changed colors, but it's been going on for a long time.
So, is there any way that feminists, when the ones from us who want to make a change, the ones who want to contribute towards changing the narrative, is there anything that we can do about it to change it or to change the perception?
So in my chapter on beauty, the first chapter in the book, I've interviewed women from across India from various fields, right? It's not just for models and actresses that they care about their bodies. Women go to work every day thinking about what they're putting on, because will I be looked at in this way if I wear this? Will I be looked? They have to think so much about what they wear, how they look, all of it. And all the body shaming comes into, in that context. So I think it's important for us to be bold and be smart at the same time, because I interviewed this one. She, I think, is one of the she's one of the biggest, I think, financial. I don't remember what exactly. I think you'll find her in the first chapter. So she basically runs this multi-million-dollar company, and she was in the US. She's Indian, and then she moved to India to be the head of this. And then the first thing she started doing was wearing a sari to work. And I asked her why. And then she's like, because people just immediately respect you at work and they trust you. And her job was to, get people to invest in her company, right? And then she's like, if they see me in a sari, they trust me and they invest in it. And that was a complete, not that she was complaining about it. She loves saris, she's like happy to wear it, but that's her choice. So I think it's important for all of us to like just be happy with our own bodies and not judge other women as feminists.
So true. So true. And the judging, I think, happens like even with clothes. I mean, not just body shapes and things. It's a lot of times it's women who point out that, oh, what is she wearing? What was she thinking? So maybe if we could.
Yeah, it's
start
like
with-
I never get it. If a woman is like wearing a bikini, then if this woman would say, "Oh my God, she's exposing so much, she's not being feminist." If she's all covered up, then she's like, "Oh, she's so covered up, she's not." I mean, who decides that? It's for each woman to decide what she wants to wear, like what's comfortable for her and what's empowering for her.
And also, if you identify as a queer person, and I understand that the onus of education is on the rest of the community and not the marginalized community. But having said that, do you think that as a community, what can we do? What can the entire community do to make the LGBTQIA people feel more accepted, or maybe try and not alienate them? Is there something that we can do? I'm asking this at the cost of sounding very trivial, but I think we need that education.
No, I think it's important for everybody to be allies, for sure. Um, I would say to this that honestly, I feel that all of us here have queer potential. We've just not explored it.
So true.
Okay? So I think that's the norm. Like, I think you guys are not being normal by not exploring it, to be honest. So I think it's not about tolerance. It's about acceptance. It's about accepting that we're all queer in a sense. We're all androgynous, and I think the queerer the world becomes, we can all be truly who we are. It's about being true to yourself. That's what it is to be queer. That's why we have pride, because we are proud of ourselves. We're not, it's not only about being marginalized, being oppressed. All of that is the truth of our lives, but it's about pleasure, it's about love, it's about acceptance, it's about happiness.
I wonder if if we didn't grow up watching, these staple films of boy meets girl, falls in love with girl, and things like that, then would we ever be conditioned into, maybe most of us are just conditioned into being straight. I mean,
Yeah, exactly my point. So maybe if we watched a lot of the other stuff, things would be very different. Like you never know, right? Just go to the temples and look at the sculptures.
exactly. So, do you think, in your view, you are a filmmaker yourself? Do you think there are some films maybe that you have seen that you thought did do a good job of making, maybe showing what feminism looks like, or maybe they showed what were not very sexist, or
Feminist movies, hard for me to say. In fact, it's very funny because like what I grew up, I'm Tamil. So I grew up watching a lot of like Tamil and Telugu movies because that's what were like shown on TV, right? So Vijay Shanti, there was this woman called Vijay, this actress,
Yeah.
Telugu actress. She was always the cop. Like she would like just like be on like fighting. This was in the 80s, 90s, you know. And I grew up watching this. This was my first feminist that I saw on TV. I was like, wow, this woman, like, you know, that's the sort of, I look for feminists in the most sort of places that you'll never expect. I look for it in like soap operas and like I'll find them there too. Like they're really feminist women. So yeah, so I don't go by the conventional idea of what's feminist.
so I try very hard when I speak to a woman to not speak to her about motherhood because it's quite limiting as an identity. But I'm very curious to know what were the changes that you saw in yourself and in your thinking once you had a daughter.
Let me think. Oh my God, I dedicated this book to my daughter.
Yeah,
So
Arya, yeah.
yeah, I think motherhood is definitely a changing an experience that changes. At least for me, it changed me a lot in the sense that I think I've never felt this sort of overwhelming need to be there for somebody. You know, like I've been so selfish all my life. Like you know, with this
Good.
this child, I just feel like, oh my God, this child needs me. You know, she needs me to look after her and all of that. And I think it's just a joy. I think motherhood is a joy. And I think to bring up another person in the world. And I think, oh, I should tell you this story about my daughter, which I'm so proud of. So in her school, they have these, they brought ducklings into the school, right? And then she didn't know whether the duckling was a boy or a girl. So she told everybody in her class, let's call the duckling they. Let's not call it he or she. So she understands what I'm doing in my life, and I'm like, I'm so proud that I'm passing it on, you know, to my daughter.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing, the joy that you get in life. That okay, somebody knows, and they're taking our truth forward.
So for our readers, for your information, her daughter is only 6 years old, and this is, I think, the best way that you can say how we are the best examples for our children, isn't it? And that's where they learn all these things from. So, is there anything that you are ensuring that she does or doesn't do, or how to what extent do you control her life?
Oh my God, that's a personal question.
Because it is.
I think I'm like a very, not a controlling mother, but I'm like all Asian moms, right? I'm like, do well in your academics. Like, you know, work. She's 6, but I'm still like already like, no, but I think, I mean, my partner is very, he's a lot of fun. So he's sort of like the cool person, cool dad, and strict mom. So that's how it is. And I don't think I'm like trying to do anything to her, but I just want her to be a very open-minded and kind person. So I think those are the values that I really care about. That I want her to be kind to everybody. That's something I tell her all the time. Don't be one of the mean girls, because I was a geek growing up, you know. So I tell her like, be nice to everybody.
Aw. Yeah, that's. I mean, she better be. I hope all these girls are now. Like nowadays, you see even girls very young, bullying each other and things. Even I mean, boys as well. Though it was there even when we were young,
Mm.
but because that exposure is more, you just
Yeah. It's not
See,
okay
oh
to
my God.
bully. Like you
Yeah.
know, you need to tell. It's not okay to get bullied or be a bully. You know, that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. So what all you're now that you're doing your doctoral thingy, so you are based now completely out of the UK.
Yes.
So that's home.
I
UK is
think
home
so.
now?
Yeah, it feels like home now. Although I'm really enjoying the sun here. It's 2 degrees there, so I'm just like, give me the sun. But yeah, that's home now. Yes.
So will we see you getting back to fiction, or what is your?
I am working on a novel.
Oh,
Yeah.
you are?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'll tell you more when it has a form.
And will that be also around this particular?
It'll be a
theme?
queer novel. Yeah, that's the. I'm in that space.
What is your take on the movements that are happening in India? I'm sure you're aware of all the LGBTQI activism that is happening, and nowadays we have companies who have these rules in place, which some might contest are on book and just in paper and not really happening. So, what is your take on this movement that is happening in India? What is
I'm so proud of it. Like in India, like the movement, I've collaborated with. There's a Queer Chennai Chronicles. This person called Mauli. He runs so many things. They petition, and in fact, recently in Tamil Nadu, what they have done is that they have shared this sort of like a paper with them, which tells you how to talk about queer people in the media. So when you're referring to them, how to use, what pronouns to use, how to talk about it, even with empathy and with understanding. Don't just put your prejudices like out. So they have come up with that, and they've done that. So that's amazing. And now in March, it's 7/7 went away was such a big deal, right? Because that was the reason. That was what like a whip that was used to assault us when we were growing up here. So now that's I'm so happy for all the kids now. Like I'm so happy that they can be free. So it's so important to have the rights, and all the movements are very important.
right? What's the? Is there any your favorite feedback that you've got for your book?
Okay, let me think now. God, I think liked how In fact, like the criticism you said, people have said the exact opposite too. Like how they like it so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Like I would make you think one way, and then I'm going to make you think the exact opposite way, so that you can decide for yourself which way is the right way for you, right? So that a lot of people got, they understood, and for other women, it's just been like help, like a mantra to just help them, like self motivate them, to just get on with the day, and like reading about all these other women. And I must thank every woman I have interviewed for this book who've shared, their personal stories, their ideas with me. So yeah, I think those were my favorite
Feedback.
Yeah.
And you have obviously covered a lot of voices, but there were any that you had to leave out, but you really wanted to include, and any anecdote that was there that really touched your heart.
Oh yeah, there was a lot more that I had to take out of the book because it could only be that big. It could only be that long. But yeah, there were. In fact, when I started writing this book, I'd interviewed not only millennials and Gen Zs. I'd also interviewed like slightly older folks. But in the end, this book became about millennials and Gen Z, so I couldn't include, some of the some of the interviews that I'd made with others. So that is a heartbreaking thing for me. Maybe in another book I'll put it somewhere.
So you call it, so you're saying a guide, but to me I think it was more like a Bible, as in, and I don't mean it in the religious sense, but it's more like a manual kind of a thing that you can just read and you can just figure out things on your own.
Yeah.
So that's what I felt about it. Also, I was just we were having a discussion when we were reading about your book, and we felt that
Let down. So I'm thinking I should make this into a kid's book with pictures.
that would be, we would really look forward to
Yeah,
that.
that would be maybe. Let's see.
So this one is for me, and I hope I can pronounce it correctly. If you could tell us about
Saudashe.
Saudashe.
Yeah. So that's actually from my second book, the collection of short stories, and this is the one about Meher, right? The one about. Okay, so what would you like to know?
I just so when I read about it, I looked it up, and it said it's a feeling of nostalgia.
Mhm.
And but it's some other language. It's not.
Yeah.
So I just got really curious that what it means and what it means to you, and how could you I think you practically wrote an entire book about.
Yeah,
About
so
Saudashe.
the second book I wrote was a collection of short stories, and one of the recurring themes in the book was nostalgia, was this Saudashe, which is this sort of feeling that you're always missing something and you're searching for something in your life, like that self, search. and I'm very spiritual and I search a lot. So this book was about that, and in that book, Saudashe, it's about in that story, Saudashe, it's about this woman called Meher who's in a happy marriage. So I mean, happy on the surface, and she has a little child. But then she's searching for something within her. She misses something. Something is missing. And then when she goes away on a holiday, she ends up having this sort of one night stand with somebody. And then that sort of opens up all sorts of questions for her. She's very conservative otherwise, in a very like traditional sort of situation. And then she comes back. She doesn't tell her husband about what happened. And then it's about how she figures that this life she has right now is not the life she wants, nor is it that the life she wants with that other person she slept. She doesn't want that life either. But she realizes, I don't want any of this, you know? And she leaves all of that and then she goes away. And that's the story. So it's about that feeling of, I don't know what I want.
How do you feel, like we spoke about being inclusive towards the LGBTQIA community. How do you feel as because we are relative people of privilege, how do you think we can work more towards people who are not as privileged as we are?
See, that's a question I ask myself a lot as well, because I'm very privileged. What do I do, right? So in my life, I try to do a lot of free things. Like I teach. I teach. That's what I do. So I do a lot of creative writing courses, workshops for free for queer people. You know, and I collaborate with all these organizations to do stuff like that. I think it's individual also. Obviously, we can do these collective things, but individually in our lives, we need to see how can we make it better for somebody else? How can we contribute to the larger cause? How can we make somebody else's life better? You know, and I think that tangible thing is important. Having good intentions is all very good, but nothing will change until you have tangible change, right? So when it comes to more underprivileged people, the charity is, I mean, charity is great, giving away money and all of that, but I feel that tangible change is better. Give somebody an opportunity to do something. Give somebody, if money is what they need, give them money, whatever it is that they need. Give them, share knowledge. I think sharing knowledge is also so important, right? Because people don't have access to, in the academia, that is the case. So you see that, so all these sort of journals, you have to pay for it, to read papers from it. So I would give free things wherever I can, share knowledge, stuff like that. So I think for every person in whatever field they are, they can make change.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So I think now, Sindhu, we can open the forum for questions. She has been very concise.
Yeah, we have time, and
She
I'm
has
sure we
been
have a lot of
incredibly
questions too.
concise in her
Also, I
responses.
speak very fast. Once somebody told me, you speak too fast, speak slower. I said, you think faster.
I see one hand back there.
I'm so happy to see so many men here.
Good evening, Sindhu.
Hi.
I have read your book. In the chapter called Society, Sanskar and Choice, you talk about online activism. Do you think patriarchy has, in the long run, subverted and hijacked this potential of the medium, the social media, for online hashtag activism?
This is a very interesting question because a lot of research gets done on this. And what we often find is that when women rise up and have these hashtag, campaigns or whatever, the amount of trolling that happens, the sort of personal, misogynistic, horrible things that are said to them, makes so many women just stop because it's affecting their mental health, right? And it's so personalized, it's so pointed. And that's a big problem, okay? And not that, and many of these social media sites do not care to edit that out or like censor that. They just let it, they're like free speech, everybody can say what they want. But women don't have so much time, or they don't care to go trolling people like that. But some badass women do troll, and they do go out there and get these people and do that. And all hats off to, and more women do that, I think that would change things. I'm so glad you joined us.
Thank you for the wonderful deliberations you two had. I have two questions. I'll state it very briefly. One is a question on the idea of sexuality and whether the very idea of understanding from the perspective of sexuality has a potential in addressing the intersectionality of caste, class, race, and other kind of ascribed identities. And the second is a question related to agency, right? If you see this daily afternoon soaps, right? हमारे बहुत सारे programs आते रहते हैं, right? In which there is a particular framework in which we operate, and particularly gender operates, where the lead role is a female, right? She is the hero, she is the villain, she is the one who is doing lot many stuff, right? But it all
Are you
operates.
talking about the Bahusa stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
So much of the agency, I am talking about the agency, the women agency that is being shown to be exercised within these daily soaps, right? These agencies operate within a particular framework and therefore reinforce the same traditional slavery than actually liberating it from it. So can you really address on these issues?
Yeah, thank you so much. The first one about the intersection of sexuality and class, caste, and all of that. That's a very interesting question, and that's something I look at in my research at the moment. So I come from an intercaste family. I have Dalit and Iyengar ancestry, so which makes me have a very complicated identity. So caste is a very important part of my life. I know what it is. I've experienced it, and so I do research in that as well. And you can see how what Brahminical patriarchy has done in terms of how it has clubbed sexuality of women. It expects caste oppressed women to perform a particular way, and it wants women from the caste where it wants to perpetuate its pure bloodlines to perform a particular way. And if any of these women transgress from that norm, they get violently oppressed. So that's what's been going on, right? So this is one layer, and then the British come in, and then they do their own oppression, like I just mentioned. So it's just these layers and layers and layers of how women have been, oppressed and not allowed to just be ourselves, just live our lives fully and thrive. So that is a very interesting question, and that's so true. I have not in my research looked at how it intersects with class, but a lot of times caste and class go together as well. And your second question, which is very interesting, which is the funniest thing, right? Because these Saas Bahu series, they give all these women such huge sort of spaces to explore their lives. But then inside of what? The same traditional sort of role. But the thing for me is, I don't think something is bad because it's traditional. I don't think so. It could, even in that space, there is space for something that could be, something. It just comes from seeing all these matriarchal women within traditional households, and not all of them are bad. Maybe in the Saas Bahu series, they're all, because for dramatic, effect, they're all like villainous and like they're turning and like, I don't know, I don't even watch it. So all that happens, but I feel that the message it's sending out is horrible. It's maybe making women like that. But I feel that the matriarchs within these families, because I have seen in my life, right, these women who don't have what we call like a college education or whatever, but like they'll be the grandmoms who are like standing up for their granddaughters, saying, let her study, let her not get married, I will pay for her. Stuff like that. These are matriarchs that I've seen, and I come from a family of matriarchs. So, for me, tradition does not equal to regressive, ever. But unfortunately, Saas Bahu series is a totally different, not my thing.
Hi, I'm going to sit and ask my question if that's okay. I'm in the front seat.
Sure.
Hi. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how do we deconstruct patriarchy or gender roles in queer relationships, because it translates, because it's power, right? So when, suppose I am a trans masked person, I look at patriarchy, or I look at the men around me who are controlled by the patriarchy as a way to act in my relationships, let's say with women. And then that power gets translated into my transmaskedness. So how, I just want to get your thoughts on that.
That's a very interesting question. It's a funny thing because I thought about it only earlier today. It was a joke I was thinking. So when I was in a relationship with a girl, right, I used to think, oh my God, both of us have mood swings every month. Like this is just crazy, just driving each other nuts. I thought maybe dating men would be better. Then I realized men are worse. And then you're like, what the hell's going on, right? So it's like, I don't even think there's anything like, you cannot expect gendered behavior within relationships because it's so fluid. And that's how it's meant to be anyway, right? It's supposed to be fluid. And I think smashing the patriarchy would be great for the men because then they can really be themselves without the pressure of being masculine, performing in this way, being the breadwinner, doing all of this. I mean, just chill at home, right? I hope that sort of answered your question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you so much for a wonderful session. I just want to ask you this. When you say you are queer, what does it exactly mean to you? And how would you describe being a queer? Because I tried to read it online, but it got me all confused. So that's why I want to know from you.
I mean, my supervisor for my PhD has been trying to get me to define queer for 2 years now. It's not easy. It is. To me, it's a lived thing. I think it's a search for the self. It's about finding different types of kinships, different types of relationships, and it's just being honest with yourself. So I don't want to label it anything.
Good afternoon. I have a question regarding the average Indian housewife. Now, a lot of women are expected to earn too, and I see a lot of women around me who are working themselves to the bone, trying to manage everything, trying to work and look after home. And how would such women smash the patriarchy and still keep their homes intact and still be super moms and still be working and earning? I mean, is there anything in the book about that, and what is your take on it? I'd be interested.
Thank you for that question. That's excellent. That's an excellent question. So I have interviewed a lot of women about this topic in the book, about women's mental health and physical health, in trying to do it all, right, without any help. Because it's not like because they're earning, all partners or their husbands are being like, oh, we'll do some of the housework as well. They're not doing that, unfortunately. So this is the reality for many women, and they are stretching themselves really thin, trying to be a great mom, trying to be a great wife, trying to be great at work, all of that. And the guilt that they carry as well for not performing, because women are perfectionists. They want to perform everything perfectly, and then like, oh, I'm not doing that well, I'm not doing. And the mental strain that women carry. There is a lot of that in the book, and I've interviewed a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists and mental health practitioners to give some tips to women on how to handle that anxiety and stress, and that's in the book as well. And recently, Aleph published another book called "The Lies Our Mothers Told Us About Having It All." So it's a thing. I think growing up, like the previous generation, like my mom's generation, wanted me to think I will have it all. She wanted me to have it all, and that was her way of being feminist, I guess. But I know now the truth that it's not so easy. But then I want it to be easy for my daughter. So I'm going to just ask the boys and the men to change. Women need not change. It's the men who need the changing. Unfortunate, but possible. See the number of men here.
I would just like to add to that because you have mentioned in your book that how it's the women, they are doing it in their own ways, their own little ways, that they are standing up for themselves. That's the first thing. And that she has clearly written that how super mom is just a flawed idea, and it's actually made by men to make sure that the woman does everything without complaining.
Yeah, don't ask me for help. You do it. You're the super mom.
We are cheering for you.
Cheering for you. But your husband was great. I saw him giving you water.
He's amazing. I mean, he's raised the bar really high.
Yeah. Good for your son.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my daughter.
Yeah, exactly. Because it starts at home, right? How the children see their parents, how do they act out in relationships? That's what they expect in their relationships.
Absolutely.
So if you set a good example, you and your husband, our children will have that.
Hello, ma'am. I loved all your talk, and I actually relate a lot to you. So you're a great woman. That's what I want to say. My question is, what are your thoughts on confidence in women being confused with arrogance, especially as like young kids who are girls? If they wanna you know break some constraints in academics and sort of they try to do their best in sports and try to present themselves more and more, oftentimes the confidence in girls is confused as arrogance, as if like, oh my god, she's a bitch, she's super arrogant, she's not supposed to behave a certain way, she has to be humble. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
So this thing about being humble, right? It's like such an old story. It's been going on for so many generations that the perfect woman is the woman who's self-sacrificing, the woman who's so humble, the woman who's so like soft-spoken, whatever, right? So so any woman who does not fit that mold, who just does anything a little different to that, would be easily called arrogant. It's just the way. This is again something I talk not just for kids, but even within corporates, for example, which in my research I found with interviews that people have told me that when men make mindless decisions, when they're like angry or they do something, they're just praised for like, oh my god, look at that, like he just did. If women do it, it's the exact opposite. Like nobody appreciates it. Like then they're like, oh my god, she's being moody or God knows what, right? So it's just the gendered way that society sees it. That's the problem. I think the fact that girls these days, I was just telling her earlier, the number of girls the young girls and women that I see here, it just makes me my heart swell with like so much pride, and I'm so happy that you guys have your heads in the right place. Just do what you're doing. Like don't listen to anybody. Be arrogant, shameless.
Yes.
Yeah, so my question is that I'm 35 and I'm unmarried. I've been asked, why don't you want to get married? Don't you have maternal instincts? So anything on that in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have interviewed a lot of millennials who are unmarried, who do not intend to get married ever, and a lot of those who are married who do not want to be they want to be child free. They do not want children. And again, society will come in and tell you. And I'm sure every family event you go to, the first question you're asked is, when can we eat at your wedding? Or like, can I introduce you to somebody? It's never ending. And then it never stops though. Because once you have a child, then be like, when is the second child coming? Like, so it never stops. And I think it needs to change. It's not that I don't know how we can change it, honestly. I wish I knew the answer to that. But I think it's a collective change that needs happening.
I love how you said child free and not childless, because that's what the term that is usually used. But you're child free, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
You use the word change, right? My question to the audience is, will this book be written by a man smashing the patriarchy?
I don't
I
doubt.
think, I think we'd not get you. Will this book be written by?
After how many? Change.
No.
Smashing the patriarchy.
Who was that? Sindhu, I have a question for you. Like Aditi mentioned, you read a lot of feminist literature before you attempted this book. And I want to know, what is your top five? What are your top five recommendations for urban Indian women? It could be a bilingual recommendation, a regional language recommendation, but I want to know your top five for Indian women.
Okay. I really liked reading How to Be a Feminist by Nivedita Menon. Or I might not agree with everything she says, but that gives you like, it's a primer on, seeing like a feminist. Sorry, that's thank you. So seeing like a feminist is one. I really like Virginia Woolf. So for me, all Virginia Woolf books, even now. So A Room of One's Own, I think, was an eye opener for me in many ways, and she's also bisexual. Her, and let me think who else. I'm just going to look in my book and tell you. So because I have, my mind goes blank with names. So just give me a minute. So Run with the Wolves, that's another book. It's about intuition. So that's another book that I'd recommend. I've told you 3. So maybe the other 2 I will maybe put it up in my some Twitter or social media or something, and people can look it up.
Because we'd love to know that list.
Yes, I'll give it to you. It's all in the book though.
Yeah, so Sindhu, I'm Bianca, and I will be moderating the session on marriage, present and future tomorrow with you,
Right.
which you must attend. So it's not fair I should be asking you questions today because I will be asking you questions tomorrow, but I couldn't resist. So we have so many movements these days, hashtag Me Too, hashtag Time's Up, and a lot of them, they come up with fake cases as well. And also, in our haste to be heard, sometimes we find we are taking such aggressive stands. So, do you think these aggressive, over aggressive stands may be pushing men into the corner and almost reacting out of self defense, as opposed to us perhaps taking a stand which is more like liable to make them respond well, like a mother singing a lullaby to her baby son saying, "Women are good, women are strong, women are beautiful." Something like that. Do you think this over aggressiveness may be working countering our actual stand?
So the thing about what you're saying about how Me Too has affected even workspaces, right? There's actually a lot of statistics that show that women are not being hired in many places because they are scared of potential Me Too moments. I mean, think about the horrible men that work there, first of all. But anyway, that apart, the number of cases of women having falsely accused somebody are so minuscule. It's not like it's like, and I think that should not take away from what this movement has been. And I think this movement was very necessary around the world and in India because we're talking about what consent is. Without that movement, nobody was even talking about consent. Now we're at least talking about it. And that is so important. So I don't think we should be less aggressive. I think we should be maybe more. Not that to scare men away or anything. I like men. It's not that. It's just that it's Kali. It's the age of Kali.
Maybe we can scare them a little bit.
Sorry?
Scare them a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
required.
Yeah.
Stay a bit scared. Yeah.
Yeah. You can be Kali and then be like, oh, I love you, sweetie.
Yeah, I think we have a question at the back.
Hello, ma'am. Just 2 very quick questions. First one is, before I ask this, I will just set some context by defining 2 terms, which some of you know or some of you don't know. One is transabled, those who purposefully disable their arms and legs just to identify as a cripple. And
Sorry,
then
what?
those who purposefully disable their arms or legs just to identify as a cripple. So those people are called transabled. Then we have a second set of people called otherkin, those who don't identify as humans but identify as animals like wolves, elves,
I don't know what to
cats.
say to this. I'm sorry, but I don't think this is a relevant question for
No,
this
my
platform.
question is my question is like how far is too far for woke culture?
Okay, so his question is how far is too far for woke culture?
Yeah.
That's
And
what is-
yeah,
So I don't really get the relevance of the examples, but okay.
Just one more small thing. I was talking to my friend about inclusion. Then he gave me a counter question is, why are you not open to the idea that I am not open to your idea?
So you tell me what idea you're not open to.
He was asking me about all this LGBTQ. I said, why are you not open to it and stuff?
I honestly do not know what to say to this. Because yeah, it's sort of, it feels like out of syllabus. Yeah, absolutely.
For those
There's
who did
your
not
answer.
hear this, Ramya said something very interesting. For those of you who could not hear this, she said it's easy to say it's woke culture if when you're not the one getting oppressed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's the answer to that question. Thank you.
We could take one last question. We have time, in fact, since this is the
Hello.
last session.
Hello.
Yes, please. Oh, 1 second.
My
yeah.
question is so at times girls are, if they are calm and composed and they're being nice, they are often confused as being naive. And when they try to be assertive,
they come across as aggressive. So, how to find that balance as a young adult? That's the question I'm asking here.
See, again, that's it's so complicated, right? Because it's not to do with how you are or how I am being. It's about how society perceives you. Because it's not that you're going, it's not like all of us are bipolar going from, we're just doing a little bit. But even that for society feels like that because they don't want you to move from whatever norm it is that they want to put you in. Could you? I'm looking. It's all right. Yeah, so I think there's nothing to say that you need to do or anybody else needs to do. Just be honest with yourself and be true to what you're feeling and express yourself. Whether it be sexuality, whatever it is, just be yourself. Just go for your dreams. And I think it's the society that needs to change, not you.
I had a question. I loved your session. I'm going to definitely read this book and hang out with you later. But I wanted to know about the real impact of smashing the patriarchy is a great term, right? It has real roots in a lot of intersectional sort of feminism, doing real work in the workplace, in women who are in abusive situations, in correcting wrongs, historical wrongs against women. But when so much of it is appropriated for token sort of representation, when brands are making, March 8th videos saying smash the patriarchy, when girl boss and lean in sort of feminism says, what your mother told you, that you can be a super mom, you can also excel at whatever you do, and you also get to do all the work. That's your bonus. Do you feel like at some point it's very hard to sort of control that narrative, especially when you're writing about it as an academic and as a writer? It's very hard to sort of see real world examples of things happening, because I remember when Me Too happened and it felt like the dawn of spring, and none of those men faced any action.
Yeah,
None.
they
In
got
India.
released from jail.
At least Harvey Weinstein, went to jail for a bit, but no one faced any impact. And it's so easy to say, oh, but the men are getting scared. But what about righting the wrongs? Yeah, so when does that happen?
I mean, that's a complicated question, right? We'll probably take another book to answer that question. But my thing about this is that being the sort of person that I am, I think all change or all anybody who is sort of standing up for something good is fine with me, even if they're doing like what you just mentioned of like just using the term smashing the patriarchy just for the sake of it, or just saying you can have it all, or you can fight, you can get this. I feel like it's a little bit of the washing that's happening, but still as there is some of that message that's going through, so I'm not completely against it. I just wish they were more honest and they were really trying to do the actual thing. That's what I hope. But you're right. It's like the real stories have to get told. That's important, and that's where the real change will come from. All these stories need to get told, and I hope these people get punished. And legal action is taken against all of those people. It's just that, and it's true around.
I'm very soft, so I have not been isolated, but I have seen women who are very much isolated. So, and waiting for the society to change, and then following this thing, means it will take many years.
So her point is, I mean, she's actually, we've had a similar question. Her point is that I'm not taken seriously because I'm so soft, and smashing the patriarchy. If I go about taking this stance, then I'll be considered very arrogant. It's a very arrogant stand to take. Then how do I then balance that? Is, I think, your question. Yeah. Another question.
Right, among people who are also soft spoken, or among people who are actually louder. Right. I mean, that happens for sure. And it's true even among women, right? Some of them are louder, some of them are softer. So even the ones who are softer might be looked upon as being very naive or very victimized by those who are louder and who are more vocal about. But I think many types of feminism exist. It's not just any one way that you can be a feminist. If at all you want to be a feminist, you can still smash the patriarchy without being a feminist.
Exactly.
In your own little ways. And what works for you. It's not just about the larger structure matters, smashing the larger structure of patriarchy, but the little patriarchies in your everyday lives, like within your home, at your workplace. Smash all of that, and you don't have to always be, this Kali smashing it. You could be a mother smash if that works for you. It just doesn't work for me. So yeah. Please tell me you're here to smash the patriarchy.
I'm interested in the art of the unsent letter, apropos the criticism that your moderator just read out. I'm curious if you have a long, well-argued piece in your draft section that you intended to send to the critique but did not.
Oh my god, it's like a thorn in my heart, right? Like when I read these things, it's just like spoils a whole week. I can't write that week. Like my self confidence is like under the carpet. But I think doing creative writing courses, like I've done masters, and I've done a lot of workshops where I've workshopped my work with my peers. So I have seen a lot of critique, and I've sort of learned to just take it in my stride, But yeah, definitely. I do have a folder of rejection letters to remind me why, I'm like, see, I published that somewhere.
I'd like to interrupt a bit here. For those of you who do not know the guy who just posed this question, he's R.S. Nilkantan, who's also one of the authors who spoke today. He's used data and statistics to prove how South India is probably trumping the rest of the world genetically, and he's a big pro on inclusion in policy. And I really see a possible collaboration here. So maybe next time you could use data and analytics to prove how women could actually change the face of the world and how they are.
Absolutely.
So I'm suggesting a possible collaboration that we could discuss in the next Lit Fest.
Yes.
We'd have one last question. Anybody from the audience?
Okay, I don't think we have any more. So I would just like to address a couple of questions that were there around the softness, and just remind you guys that if you read this book, what she's actually done is she's guiding us towards methods that all of us can use. So I might have a louder personality, so I might use different ways to fight my own struggle, and you, being a softer person, can maybe adopt a different strategy to fight your struggles. And that is why I said that this book is like a manual, because you don't really have to choose one particular thing, or really have to scream from the rooftops that you're a feminist, which I do, but you don't have to. So that is what this book guides you to achieve, and I think that's why it's such an important book. Thank you for a lovely session, Sindhu. It was just incredible speaking to you.
I'm so happy,
It's a
Aditi,
privilege.
and I feel like you really get my work and me. So it was
Thank
great.
you. It's a privilege, pleasure, and a privilege.
And I'm so happy with all the questions. I think you guys really you're on the right page, like you're on the right path. So and I'm so happy there are so many men here. Round of applause for them.
This brings us to the end of this session. I'd like to tell all of you guys we have enough of Sindhu tomorrow also. We're going to have a very special panel discussion tomorrow with Sindhu Rajasekaran, Sunena Arya. It will be moderated by Bianca Nazaret Arya, and it's happening at 2 p.m. at Tamarind. So it discusses marriage and the future of marriage as an institution. So the married people and the unmarried people in the audience, I'm sure, are all pretty curious to know what happens to this institution we've held so close to our hearts all this time. Before we do leave the dais, we'd like to present you with a gift that has been made especially for you. It's been made by an artist who is associated with Alang Angle, which is an art conglomerate. And it has been made specially based on the book. The artist has been briefed about your book, and they've made it specially for you. Thank you so much, Sindhu. Thank you so much, Aditi.